Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book, Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. Two, because I'm a fan of punk music. And three, it's just more fun, right? Anyway, if this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. And please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsco.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. Anyway, that's enough for me right now. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Jimmy Hosang, who is the CEO of the modular analytics company, or more commonly known as TMAC. Hey, Jimmy, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Adrian. How are you?
I'm very well, sir. Very, very well. Now, I am looking out my window today, and it looks like Manchester weather because it's chucking it down. And it's probably sunny where you are. That would be the ironic sort of like kind of thing. Because I know you're based in Salford, Manchester, I believe.
I don't think it's ever sunny. We have like 4 days of sun every year. I live by a canal as well, so as soon as the sun comes out, all I hear is like kind of men with vests drinking Stella, like marching off down the canal basin kind of thing. So it's actually grey but not raining here. So that's that's just how I like it as a Mancunian.
Well, there you go. I mean, it is. I'm based in Brighton currently, and it's tipping it down this morning. So I got properly wet. You'll see, people who are listening to the audio recording of this will see won't see the video. But I'm saying to Jimmy on the video, because we're looking at each other's video as we record this, is I've got a wet rain jacket over there, that shoulder, as he tries to get it right. I got sopping wet coming in this morning. Anyway, a bit of an aside. Jimmy, for people that don't know you, don't know your name, don't know your work, haven't heard your kind of dulcet Mancunian tones before, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
Yeah, of course. So my company, the Modular Analytics Company, or TMAC, it was 4 years ago when I named it, and everyone's cursed me ever since, especially podcast hosts. But it's a business that we provide technology to contact centers, and really the goal of what we do is to make every conversation valuable. We do it by combining a couple of different technologies and a couple of different methodologies. So we use conversational guidance, machine learning, recommendation engines. We've got speech analytics. So we analyze the calls for fluency and friction and things like that. And then we do behavioral science nudges to kind of close the loop back from analyzing the conversation back into team leaders and agents about how they can improve. But I kind of, just as I was saying that, I just realized that I used probably the most amount of buzzwords ever. I didn't say artificial intelligence, actually. I'll do that as well.
No, but you went deeper.
Yeah.
You went deeper. You went into machine learning. I was like, oh.
Machine learning, recommendation engines.
Oh, neural networks. You're like, oh my God.
No,
like,
so there's actually a joke, internal joke at the company, that I'm banned from saying neural network by our chief product officer, George, because he's like, Jimmy, every time you say neural network, someone buys a neural network for us. And he goes like, I don't think you really know what it means. So yeah, so look, I think it's really, really simple. It's taking like traditional contact center things like, scripting, like upsell and cross-sell, retention and coaching, combining it with a little bit of a sprinkle, which is like, using speech analytics to kind of monitor stuff and driving performance. And I think where we kind of really, really like our lane isn't just in the technology side, but I think it's number one, the experience. We're all contact center people. We worked in the industry for a long time. And then also affordability. So we started off as an outcome-based consultancy, and we were using other people's technology, and it cost an absolute fortune. And then to take that risk up front to procure a certain type of software, and then for it to actually, this is what happens a lot, it actually drives value, but just not as much value as the cost it was for the tech. And so we concentrate on affordability. We want to be 80% cheaper than everybody else in the market for the technology we do. And it's about speed. So within customer experience and contact centers, like it's all about like the next 6 weeks. And we typically, with our projects, we see benefits within 6 weeks. And then just as another aside, just about me personally. So I'm not a serial entrepreneur. I'm not one of those people who just do startup. So I actually worked in bars and restaurants back in the day. I played in a few bands. Nice. I was terrible. But yeah, nice, so I sang and played guitar. In fact, I think my guitar's been hidden by my wife. I accidentally got into programming. My daughter was being born, and I thought, shit, I'm gonna have to grow up and get a proper job here. So I taught myself how to program and code, and then I'd worked in contact centers just as kind of part-time. And then I accidentally got into resource planning, capacity planning, real time, and I just fell in love with it. And I've been working in customer contact and trying to make things better ever since. And, nice. And just one thing as well, another kind of internal conversation that we've been having is, I used to think that I was a data scientist or as an analyst, but actually the things that we talk about is much more around customer experience and things now, and driving the right behaviors from a company's perspective or from an agent's perspective around CX. So I think I might rebrand myself as a CX leader, see if I can win an award.
Oh, crumbs. You know what? It's like, this sounds kind of slightly kind of heretical sometimes, but I sometimes think that I wish sometimes the whole customer experience space would just go away, and that people just kind of focused on doing better work and producing better outcomes. Because when we talk about customer experience or employee experience or customer service or kind of whatever it might be, any type of sort of thing, what we end up doing, I think, is we end up being reductive. And it's like going down to here. So it's this, but not this. And it's that, but not that, if you know what I mean. Rather than just thinking about it kind of holistically and going, actually, because that's the thing I'm really interested in, is how do we produce or build or nurture organizations that produce better outcomes for both their customers and their people. And I mean people in the broader sense. So it's like both their employees and their suppliers and their kind of stakeholders and all of that sort of stuff.
100% agree. It becomes a cottage industry.
Oh yeah,
and it becomes a cottage industry that then a bunch of consultants like sell.
Yeah, but they roll in and then start kind of going like, you can take my secret medicine.
Yeah, or here's a 4-week program about how to train out empathy or stuff to your staff. It becomes these cottage industries, which is, I'm not super transactional, but I am a little bit transactional. But if we were just trying to make ourselves like incrementally better every single day, like by having a better conversation or making sure that we mentioned this on the call, or we were making it easy for the customer, just a little bit easier every day, I think that's better than these like big, bold bullshit kind of programs.
Yeah, no, I think this. I mean, look. There's some cool people. There's some cool tech out there that's doing some really, and I mean this in the proper way, sort of transformational stuff. I mean, there's some, some of the things that are coming about in terms of the improvement of technology, what it's able to do, how it's able to do things, all that sort of stuff. Some of the stuff is like amazing, cool, yeah. And then you get some big platforms that are going to try and pull all that together and orchestrate it all, and that's kind of cool too. But then there's all this other stuff that's buzzing around, and you just like, and it's a bit like, it feels a bit bandwagony, as it were, and everybody's trying to do it. But because the thing we were talking, and I should thank your colleague, kind of Paul, for badgering me to set this up. And one is, and I was kind of intrigued by the whole thing. Enticed and intrigued, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Is that one? I love the Mancunian accent. It's proper northern, straightforward. I'm like going, there's no surprise that you're going to get it between the eyes, as it were, kind of when you speak from somebody from Manchester. So I thought, I haven't had a Mancunian accent on the podcast for a long time, so tick box one. And then the second thing is like we just more straightforward and matter of factly. You could talk about a whole bunch of things when we were talking about this, setting this up, and I was like, that's cool, because I've had a couple of conversations like this over recent kind of months, and I kind of really like that whole matter of factness. Let's take down some of the sacred cows. Let's be opinionated. I spoke to Vasily Triant of UJet and stuff, and he was like, another thing. I was like going, oh, because actually he sort of digs into some of this stuff, and how he was talking about he was talking about 5 nines. Right, that kind of uptime type of thing, and how some people game that statistic by talking about you're talking about you're talking about like if you've got this, you're continually updating your software and you're talking about an agile methodology and stuff. Why do you have a maintenance kind of period?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah,
you're like, how is that built into your kind of like thing? Because then they end up doing, and then you end up gaming all these numbers, and it's like going, there's all this stuff out there, which is so he was trying to take down some of this sort of stuff. And when we were talking, there was you got on a bit of a roll, and I was, and I thought, oh, you said some things that I thought would be worth hearing about. I was like going, okay, fine, take some notes. Like, I want to speak to Jimmy about this. It's like, so the first thing that you said, which I want to come back to you and actually to explain yourself, young man, is that you were talking about how technology has made things worse, particularly in the service and experience sort of space. And I was like going, oh, and I thought that's kind of strange from somebody that's CEO of a tech company. So can you explain with me what you kind of mean by that?
Yeah. So look, I'm a bit off the leash and no one's told me what to say. So so as a tech CEO, like I absolutely hate technology. Like I hate technology for what it's done, or I hate technology what it does to people. I hate technology about how people use it as a sacred cow, or as my co-founder Sean calls it, the shiny bit of tin that'll solve all your problems. Because it doesn't. Yeah. It's always got to be kind of creative problem solvers using technology to drive better outcomes. Like that should be the goal. And thinking that you can just, do a data transformation program and then that fixes your issue, or, and back in the day, if you think about where I've come from a data journey and from a contact center journey, just from a data journey. So 12 years ago, it was all about data transformation. Then we moved, you probably won't know this, but it's called Hadoop. So it's like distributed file systems, Hadoop. So everybody wanted to do Hadoop, big data. Then it was like nobody talks about Hadoop now. We've got other ways in which we do big data. Then it was all about Internet of Things, like real-time streaming of data and things like that. And all the way over the last 5 years, I've seen some companies like every 3 years do something different. And I just don't think they're better off. And
that's the thing. It's like, one of the things that I kind of like when I talked about kind of punk skits, one of the things I got that the origin of the ideas is just so frustrating. It's all these different things, right? So you talk about Hadoop and stuff, and I'm sort of familiar with it, not necessarily the underlying technology and how that all kind of like works, but I've been around enough to kind of to be dangerous if ask questions, go like, I don't really understand how that works, but tell me how it actually properly works. Yep. But the thing I kind of seems a bit like what you're saying. It's a bit like going, how that dog out of Up when it goes squirrel, and then it's off point, and it's a bit like that's the next shiny object, as it were, whether it's data this or IoT that, or kind of et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that you're absolutely kind of right that it's almost that technology's become this thing, this panacea. It's like the church of tech will all solve your problems type of stuff. As long as you sign up to the kind of like, to a 24-month contract, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. And I think, and then, and for me, then I like kind of go back and I look at it from a customer experience, customer contact lens. And so it wasn't the tech first. I think first it was an idea, and it was the dangerous idea that scripts ruin customer experience. Mm-hmm. So I did performing arts at university. I've spoken about it before. Mm-hmm. Like to me, I use scripts for 15 years, going through junior school through to university, and then post university I used to appear in kind of plays and done some TV acting and things. And no one ever, when you do a script correctly, no one ever says it's inauthentic or you only just stick to the scripts. These elements that you put around it, but of course, nobody would say Robert De Niro's not authentic, or even like if you're singing somebody else's songs, Elvis Presley's not authentic. But somehow we kind of conflated 12 years ago like this. We need to get rid of scripts. Okay, but by getting rid of scripts, you effectively outsourced your customer experience to the frontline agent. Right. And then you have high amounts of churn that go through that. And it's a misunderstanding about how people are wired, because I've done customer service without a script in branches or in pubs and bars and stuff, and I still have a script. It's just my script. Yeah. I tell the same jokes all the time. I say the same things. I have the same opening. I have the same upsell, but I've done it myself. So we kind of outsourced it. And then we lost control. And then at the same time this was happening, it was the advent of digital marketing. And again, because we were then able, any kind of brand was then able to digitally carpet bomb like everybody for very, very low cost. What that meant was sales started to increase, but then there was an ever increasing demand for, well, what's happening with your margin? How to reduce your margin? How do you, the contact center was exposed. We'd lost control a little bit. And I've seen people like removing handling times from the contact center, as well as removing scripts, and AHTs jump in. And then everything became a margin play. Like we've effectively like maximized the market for sales. And now the only way that we can improve for shareholder value and things is a margin play. And so those were the two kind of external forces that have been happening. Mm-hmm. And then we started to get into this, what I believe to be a bit of a vicious cycle. So first of all, it was digitize the contact through web chat. Went to web chat. It's actually much less efficient for either party to do a web chat than it is to do a voice call. But we made up that it was better anyway.
Well, you only have to compare how quickly we can talk and understand the conversation versus kind of how quickly we can type.
100%, but that's logical, isn't it? So like it takes you ages to type, and then it takes you ages to read and comprehend rather than actually hearing. So it's just logical. But we tried to do web chat. We tried that. Nobody remembers this, but everybody thought that web chat was going to be like the big cost saving panacea, and it wasn't. And then it was about driving.
It was only going to cost saving because you go like, oh, we think we can get people to operate across 6 conversations on average at one time.
You're like, how good a conversation are they going to have across 6 conversations? Like, how are they going to notice like whether or not there's a buying signal or a vulnerability signal?
And all you're effectively doing is you're having 6 people in one interchanging queue at any one time, because you go to one conversation like, hi, how can I help you, blah, 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 and then they were typing on to the next, hi, how can I help you, how can I help you, how can I, it's just like, and then everybody's waiting, it's taking the long way and chopping it up into kind of like the chipolata sausage waiting kind of queue,
100%. And there's an even funnier thing as well, Adrian, about that is to get your concurrency. you've got to understaff to your demand. So basically, you guys have always got to be busy.
Yeah.
So if you think of peak web traffic during the day, it goes up and down. You can never get to the maximum because you've got to understaff it so much to get to 3 concurrency or 4 concurrency. So obviously, I come from resource planning and capacity planning, and when I started to run these numbers, I was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And then what you then kind of moved into is, right, well, we'll start to try and introduce chatbots into elements of it to reduce the handling time. The chatbots are shit because they're not trained on anything. It was, how can I just try and quickly remove handling time from this channel so I can make it look good? It wasn't driven by what's good for the customer.
Yeah.
It was driven by, we've messed up here and now we need to kind of claw something back. And therefore, like, the rise of like terrible chatbots. And then now the next element is obviously even worse chatbots that going in that haven't been trained properly on like what your human customers and how your human agents would interact and what the right scripts, just effectively a cosplay. We've messed up web chat, so we need to put in some of the automation. And then finally, my massive bugbear, which is digital self-serve, which is like, my belief is it's like a bit of a cop-out. Like, I'm digitally savvy, but sometimes it's always quicker to like use voice. If I could get straight through to somebody, if I could click a button, go straight through to somebody and go, can you change my address? Get them, then go, okay, you can change your address. This is it, bam, 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 and then put it in. End to end, I've done the timings. It would be easier. It's all the barriers that we come in. And if we reflect on it, like some really, really top brands who really, really understand customers. So Amazon, Google, Apple, they all have home assistants, voice activated home assistants. It's all voice because they understand. And a lot of these companies as well, especially like Google and Apple, Google in particular is new, but Apple have physical stores because they understand that so much of the experience is still in the human to human.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's a bit of a rant.
No, I love it because I think you're absolutely spot on. Particularly around about things like chatbots and stuff. Is like when people put things in place when their starting kind of point is like when they go, oh, it's about call deflection. You're like going, yeah, you're often on the wrong footing right after that. Yeah, I understand kind of the economics of it all. But if you're starting from a point of like call deflection, then all you're basically doing is like going, I want to kind of minimize that and I want to find a cheaper sort of way of like just getting it away because I don't really care about it.
But so Adrian,
it should be that, and this might just be a subtle mindset kind of like shift. It should be like going, can I create something that is going to be aligned with what my customers kind of like want? Customers might go, oh, I want to call you or I want to try and do something kind of out of office hours and therefore I can self-serve. And if I can do that via a chatbot and stuff, which may tell me how to do this and they point them to that and I fill that form and it goes into a system and then it gets taken care of. You're like, wow, jobs are good. And that's not about that you, and then the positive externality in economic terms is that you get call deflection out of that. You also get a reduction in, hopefully if you do it right, because you get the people that are conversation experts, i.e. the people on the front line to help design all that sort of stuff, then you get a better kind of outcome for the customer and you get kind of a reduction in failure demand and all that sort of like stuff because people aren't kind of trying to do that and then they call you and go, what? And then it so I think I completely get that. I mean, but
so and just on that final point though, I completely agree. Like if first of all, you'd have a homogenized is wrong, but you'd have a consistent experience through voice and digital if you kind of joined up those processes together and got people to join in. But ultimately, the reason why that's not happening is you've got kind of operating model. You've got digital teams and transformation teams aside from your operation, and then fundamentally we lie to ourselves. So we lie to ourselves as transformation leaders. There's this thing now, which is why are our NPS scores and why are our survey scores going down? Oh, it's because humans nowadays have less patience and they're more demanding because they want even better service. And that is nonsense. It's because we put so many barriers in place to good service, that people are just getting frustrated because they're getting bounced from pillar to post.
Yeah.
And we think, oh, it's just because the consumer's more demanding. Absolute nonsense. It's because we've ruined it.
Well, I think that's probably that's really fair. I think the thing that I would also say is that, and this is a problem I feel that we continually come up against, and many kind of brands, I would say not many, kind of like most brands suffer from this. If you actually turn around to them and said, articulate to me your experience kind of vision, your customer experience vision about where where it is kind of currently right now and where you want it to be, and tell me some stories around maybe some customer archetypes or personas, and tell me exactly kind of like what you, if they were to if your customers would retell it back to you, assuming you delivered, tell me what they would think and how it would work. Give me some scenarios. And most people would be able to do that.
No, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't. So you can think about it. You go like, they have no idea kind of the outcome that they want to get from a customer perspective. They haven't got this. They haven't drilled down into that kind of that vision where you can turn around and go, well, this is what it kind of feels like to be a customer now, and this is what it feels like to be a customer kind of like in the future. This is what we're building to, and to get to that, we're going to have to go X, Y, and Z, and we understand the economics of all that and the kind of operational sort of thing, the technology requirements, and all these different things. And I get that it's complex when you get to big brands which are working across multiple regions and all these different things, and that you get tied into contracts and all these different sort of things. It's all that sort of stuff. But I'm sorry, that's not my problem. You built that shit. That's your thing to kind of like untangle, as it were. But you can't kind of, if you don't have a vision about really what you want to do, because then you don't really understand what you need to untangle.
Yeah, but you've articulated it correctly. This isn't technology. This is vision.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And it's like not trying to work to a metric or, operationally we go, it's first contact resolution. Maybe it's first contact, but who's saying that it's been resolved? Is it your agent going, I resolved this? Or is it your customer who's saying they've resolved it? Like, is it NPS? Well, I think NPS is a pretty rubbish metric. Like, but what's your vision about what experience, how people should feel about your brand after contacting you?
Absolutely,
it's been lost.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely, because you mentioned NPS a couple of times, because when we were talking before, you also kind of talked about sort of vanity metrics like NPS don't make sense, and I was like, I'm like going, take aim. Fine. NPS, because actually I tell you what, NPS, I think it has its place, but it's become another, it's like a church, or no, it's not a church, it's like becoming its own little cult or movement sort of thing. And it's like, it's not that kind of panacea, as it were. It's not as kind of servile, but anyway, I'm going to let you off the leash on this one as well. Like, vanity metrics, like NPS, don't make sense. Jimmy, discuss.
Every time I talk about this, I have like dozens of people, like the army of NPS warriors who come like banging up my door. But I'm gonna like double and triple down like today, just because like I didn't have breakfast this morning, so I'm a bit hungry. But NPS is rubbish. Right? It's not a holistic measure for customer experience. It doesn't work. It might work on a particular sector or on a particular brand,
or in a particular moment,
or in a particular moment. But I've looked at this analytically across multiple different sectors, multiple different brands, different types of product, and it doesn't map. So if it doesn't map, like even across like one insurer to another insurer on retention, if I'm not seeing the same correlations, then how can you be comparing like apples with apples? It just doesn't work. And actually, to me, it doesn't work. It doesn't work logically or analytically. And I think the logic comes first, because the question is, how likely are you to recommend like X brand based on your service today, especially when you're talking about experience and customer service? Maybe kind of at a brand level, but like if you're talking about the service, right? How likely are you to recommend, right? How many people talk about their insurance company or the bank?
How many people can talk about the interaction they've had with their insurance kind of company that went really, really well?
Yeah, but
like in that kind of like micro kind of like.
When does it come up in conversation? Adrian, when does it come up in conversation? like
Jimmy, another pint? Well, let me tell you about kind of this conversation I had with my insurance rep.
It's like for you to recommend things, it has to come up in conversations, and it's stuff like it. So for me, when I've seen NPS correlate with financial performance, like I've seen it for fashion because people go, oh, like where did you get that from? I've seen it work for supermarkets sometimes because sometimes you go, oh, like I bought this from Aldi or I bought this from Waitrose, but just boring, everyday, monotonous, like kind of administrative companies who sell products and services, like it just doesn't come up in conversation. If it doesn't come up in conversation, then how likely are you to even mention it or recommend? And I think it's a sampling problem. You've got a small sample of people who actually respond to surveys, and then you've got, if your product isn't in just general conversation, then you've got even less likely to recommend. So I think it rarely correlates, and therefore, like, how can we just be using it just so like blanket across customer service? And for me, like, there's far better ways to do it. It's actually, NPS is a throwback metric to when you couldn't join all your customer touch points and their purchasing behavior.
Right.
But now we know like how many times people have contacted us, how many times that they've been on the website, how many times they've chatted. We know whether they've made a complaint. We know what products they've purchased. We know after a particular contact, what on a particular contact, we know the sentiment of the call. We know the things that they spoke about. We know whether or not like there was friction on the call. We know if the person who was on voice or chat was high tenure or low tenure. We know all of these types of things, and we know what they purchased afterwards in the next 30 days, 90 days, a year. And I think it's much easier to look at all of those touch points and correlate that to repeat purchase behavior, mm-hmm. or a retention, if it's potentially like a retention problem or a cancellation problem, and highly accurate.
The kind of thing that kind of makes me think about when you're talking about this is that. And you talk about this kind of correlation and comparison and all that type of stuff. And it makes me think about and how you say that these things don't map. They're going to go maybe the same insurance providers or the same kind of financial services or the same other kind of like brands somewhere. And it does map better in other areas than some. But it seems to me that you're also getting to the kind of the point where people are measuring this stuff. We're trying to gather people around the kind of the metric in order to do that. Everything's external.
Yeah.
But it's not an internal sort of like kind of focus. So actually people are more care about what they're doing as it compares to others, rather than actually going, you know what? I don't give a shit about other people as long as I'm smashing it at the park on my own card, as it were.
I like that. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, it's like an external benchmark.
Well, it's almost like an external kind of locus of kind of like control in many ways. It's kind of like benchmarking. Like, what is the point? Like, if you're kind of here, if you're kind of your if your main competitor is here and they're shit, and you're kind of marginally less shit than them, that makes you market leader. You're like going, is that enough? Is that good enough? And it's like, for me, I'm sorry, that's nonsense. Why would you come kind of like to what? And if you think about priding yourself on doing a good job, you're like a good job is like being slightly less shit than other people.
That's what I always try and do. Like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that. I mean, for me, I think I'm thinking about that and going like, that doesn't fly.
No, it's not. It doesn't, and it's like, and it's so strange as well. Yeah, it's become a cottage industry. Like for all of the shit that I talked about, data and being missold and big data transformation, all this type of stuff. We live in a quantitative world.
Mm-hmm.
It's quantitative, and NPS is a qualitative measure, and we've got so much information about people. I've done a piece of work around changing the ownership in owning a problem within a contact center. Mm-hmm. It was removing handling times and giving the frontline agents, there was a frontline team and second line support team and stuff, giving the frontline agents like more autonomy to take ownership, to provide discounts and things like that within reason. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now this wasn't conversational guidance or anything like that. So it ran wild, and handling times went absolutely like through the roof because of it. And there was some things that we needed to do. However, when we did the analysis, because we had all the touch points and all the purchasing behavior, what we showed was that we put on about £2 million worth of costs into the business in terms of operational costs. Nightmare. But actually, in terms of incremental repeat buying behavior, we brought in an extra £8 or £9 million a year because people were owning the problem. And we did all of that without NPS, but I was still told to track NPS. But really, the thing that got this over the line, because you can't spend an extra £2 million a year to add 10 points to your NPS, but you can correlate this behavior with these people coming in and having increased basket spend and increased purchase frequency.
Of course, I mean, but that's what every kind of like kind of experience kind of project should be doing. Should be tracking its impact on kind of financial kind of metrics, because then we're able to nail ROI every time, because many kind of these projects still can't do it. And I think there's always been 5 core levers across all kind of businesses. People talk about we want more customers, more revenue, greater profitability, all that stuff, but they're outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a bit like, how attractive are you? How much demand can you create? Your ability to convert that demand will drive your customer numbers. Then it's like, how much they spend on average and how frequently they spend will drive your kind of overall kind of revenue in a particular period. And then it's your cost to serve, your operating kind of like the cost to serve, and that drives your profitability. Boom, there's your 5 things. Can your project map to one or more of those kind of 5 things? That's how you prove it.
100%. And it's so much easier than it was 10 years ago to map the experience to the financials that I just don't understand. But I just feel as though, again, we've got lost like a donkey, like just thinking like it just very, very narrowly and going survey, CSAT, NPS, things like that, when actually there's a whole heap of ways which you should be measuring your business. And if you don't measure your business in the right way and your operations, then you make bad decisions.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jimmy, we could probably kind of go down a bunch of rabbit holes kind of like all morning, and but let's not kind of do that. Wanted to come back to something you mentioned right at the top of the call. You talked about speech analytics, and also kind of to ask you to comment on a thing that you said to me. She said that speech analytics has been missold and that transcription accuracy isn't the golden goal. Now, I see the promise and the usefulness in kind of speech analytics and how it's kind of used and its promise kind of going forward, particularly around this kind of changing data landscape, around acquisition of first-party data and zero-party data, and how it can all link and everything. And I think there's a real future for the contact center as this intelligence hub and an expanded role, and how it connects with marketing and sales and everybody else is about insight and personalization and all that type of stuff. But I want to come out to this idea that speech analytics has been missold and that transcription accuracy isn't the golden goal, which you mentioned to me, just to get your kind of take it to better understand what you meant by that.
So look, what's happened is speech analytics has been used again to try and drive down cost.
Right.
So we've been using it to identify which parts of a conversation or which conversations we can migrate to self-serve or cheaper channels. And that's not what it's really, really great for. And the problem is when you need to very specifically define, like, could I have moved this to a specific channel? you've got to do a very specific metric. You've got to build a specific category. And to build a specific category, you need to have really high word accuracy.
Right.
But what speech analytics is great for is being used in combination with other elements. So we do things around scripting, changing the scripts, doing behavioral nudge scripts, and we do things around next best action, recommendation engines, upselling and cross-selling.
Right.
The first thing that for speech, which is great at, is looking at your complete landscape and giving you a feel for who's talking too much, who's not talking enough, what's the tempos of the conversation. It's great at looking at like what is the sentiment of the call and whether or not it goes up and down, how many start positive to negative, negative to positive, things like that.
Are you been able to do kind of, sorry to interrupt, are you able to do kind of like A/B testing on that type of stuff? And so you can tweak a script and then kind of how that might be the cross-sell, upsell, and then you can measure it, you understand kind of the variance and things.
100%. And
Bingo.
But you analyze your script, analyze what you're doing right now. You say, this is really rubbish. We need to have better fluidity and we need to have better recommendations. And then you use speech analytics to monitor whether or not people are sticking to the script. So rather than traditional QA stuff, it's like nudge adherence. Are they adhering to the script? Are they picking up the clues and the indicators for the recommendation engines and things? And then how closely is your performer sticking to your script, kind of thing? And then
also, is it driving the outcomes when you go, I want this tweak? Is it driving the outcomes that I want? So you can in many ways, in a really hard thing to do, you're almost trying to create or prove causality.
Well, it's exactly proving causality, because if you just did a script and you didn't use speech, then how do you truly know who's nailing your call opening, or who's nailing the framing of your proposition, or are they closing correctly? You're kind of guessing. And 50% of the benefits that we drive is through the use of technology, and 50% is giving the operational guys the tools to make sure that the guys are adherent. And so tempo is very, very important, like understanding like the speed through which you're moving through different states in a call. But you can't properly measure tempo unless you're looking at speech and you're looking at the drop-offs in sentiment. And so all of these ways are way, way better like uses of speech analytics and the technology in conjunction with recommendation engines and things. And then you take all of those and push them into better coaching outcomes, more specific coaching. All of that is way better than going, tell me what happened on the call so I can push it back to self-serve. Because I'll be honest with you, if you're going to do that, you might as well have a disposition button. You might as well just have some drop-down boxes like this was about this, and then the secondary reason was about that. That's a miles cheaper way of getting to the same result.
Yeah, no, I like it. I mean, because I do think that I think we're only just seeing the start of what you can do around that, analyzing kind of like the richness of kind of like data and insight that are in voice calls, but also how you can use it as an intelligence gathering, outcome measuring sort of medium and stuff as well. Because before it's been more record the calls, transcribe the calls, do the sentiment analysis, a retrospective QA type of thing, right? Whereas like this other stuff is more about in the present and then future focused. Where I think where some of the exciting stuff is the possibilities is exciting.
And then you use the speech to continuously improve your scripts and your recommendations, and then improve your people. And then that creates a virtuous circle. And then once you've nailed that, once you go, our operations are like providing so much value now, then think, oh, well, maybe now I can start putting this into web chat, and maybe I can start automating some elements of this because I've kind of nailed it. Mm-hmm. But don't go greenfield over here and think that you know everything about customer experience when human to human is so valuable.
No, I think so. I mean, I think there's a real prospect to use voice as a way of improving the kind of the personalization, the connection, and the kind of capturing of that sort of like data. It's almost like if a call's going well, if you've got somebody on the phone and in a moment, you can almost you can use that opportunity to maybe kind of go, look, we're trying to do this. Can I ask you a couple of quick questions?
Yeah.
And then you can, and that's first part of it, and then that all can get automatically captured and entered, and then you get, and then it becomes using it. It's why wouldn't you take the opportunity?
And I'm against, and then as well, another of things that Jimmy Hosang is against. Like, I'm against this push for real time speech. Wait a second. I mean, I'm taking 40 to 60 to 70 calls a day. I'm working like on multiple screens on multiple different problems at a time. Like, I'm in a hot state. Like, I'm trying to just get through my calls and trying to do it as best I can. What I don't want is a load of shit flicking up on the screen telling me to do stuff all of the time, because that's cognitive overload. But at the beginning,
I'll push back on that a little bit, because I think there is a challenge. And there's some kind of interesting stuff that comes out from that real-time speech analytics sort of stuff when it fills that gap around access to knowledge, and it fixes that kind of access to knowledge thing. So you're not like rooting around 10 different apps looking for the right answer. If you can facilitate the uncovering of that knowledge kind of like right in that kind of moment, and if that improves that cognitive overload and that kind of efficiency sort of thing, then I'm all for that.
Yeah, and look, maybe I'm going quite extreme, but then I think listening to what the customer's saying and then having the right delivery mechanism through which knowledge comes in, not just having a shitload of knowledge articles, but basically putting that knowledge going, this customer wants to change their address. Boom, it brings me back like, what is the most optimum way of changing the address, rather than going to an external website to search about it and stuff like that. I think that's where I'm coming from. And these other uses for real time, like real time identification of vulnerability is massive. What I'm effectively saying is 80 to 90% of the benefit that you could get is when your agent's not in a hot state, when they're in a reflective state, in a coaching session going, you did 200 calls like over the last few days. 80% of them were great. These are the ones that you didn't quite nail. Let's just listen to them and think about how you could have done it better. That's better than having just things like popping up and flicking around and stuff like in the moment, because I think that's just distracting from it's like, if I'm saying that your agents are performers, it's like performing in front of the crowd and people are just throwing stuff around and like taking pictures and stuff. It's distracting.
Yeah. No, I think that's kind of fair. But I think that, I think the bottom line of all this, like we've talked about, Jimmy, is that it's actually about the experience that we want to create and the outcomes that we want to produce. It's it's a cart and horse type of thing, right? It's like it's not about the technology. No. It's about the experience and the outcomes we want to produce and how that's relevant and it makes sense for the businesses that we kind of run. And technology, it's like, here's the thing, at the end of every process, kind of like end-to-end process, there's a human being.
Yeah.
Like, we're not at a stage that robots buy stuff.
No.
It's like people make stuff, people buy stuff. That's kind of that's the end. And so we should remember that. And we should remember that sort of like it's about kind of how do we connect as humans, how do we connect other humans to other kind of like humans or things that they need and that they want and help that they require. So I think that's sort of like, it's all about that. It's about being that experience first and not experience kind of like an invisible ink technology, which means technology. You're like, no, it's about having a vision for what it means. And that's both internally for your agents and your reps and your people and everything else, but also from your customers, and trying to, and creating that picture so you know what you're doing and not kind of like getting to the point where you buy something and then hope for the best.
Yeah, just not, it's like the experience, like it's having that vision for your experience. It's knowing how to manage it. Like, don't use the word experience for saving costs. Don't mask, we'll call this customer experience program. And we've just found out that everybody wants to self-serve. right, because we've got like half an hour waiting times in the contact center. Don't mask stuff. Be honest with yourself. Give yourself a vision about what you want to achieve, and don't let it be a technology play. Like, hack things together, like make it work, but for the good of getting the right outcome.
Absolutely, couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Jimmy, I think, as I say, there was a few other things on the list, but I think that's probably we're gonna have to wait till part 2. Maybe we should kind of do, let those kind of things marinate a little bit, see if you can add some more stuff to it. And then we'll have to revisit this sort of thing, because I think we could probably maybe we could do it over a beer as well, and kind of like
face-to-face beer podcast. Yeah, let's do it. Like, that's my over several hours as well.
So let me kind of bring this out. It's like, and if you kind of zoom out a little bit, I mean, we've gone through the last couple of years, which have been strange and challenging for in many respects, for lots of different people and for lots of different reasons. And I wanted to ask you, because I was asking people this kind of lately, and said, like, well, for the last couple of years, what are the big things that you've learned that's going to inform how you're going to do things kind of going forward? And also, what do you think some of the big challenges are that lie ahead that we're going to need to tackle?
Yeah, so I think the move towards home working and maybe offshoring, and having a wider look at your footprint and where you want to acquire talent is going to be massive, and therefore, especially in customer contact. We've already had offshoring and things before, and we've had onshoring and then reshoring and whatever type of shoring that you want. And I think how you have great conversations at home, and how you have great conversations when you don't have the effect that you have in the office all of the time. So I think sometimes being in an office, it kind of heightens that. And if your boss has got a big stick and he can walk around and he can what's the word? Motivate you, so to speak. I think that's called the Hawthorne effect. It's like, how do you create digital Hawthorne effects? Right. And not just in a from a customer experience and operational cost perspective, but I think also, like, what are the monitoring tools that we're doing for agent well-being, being at home? I think that's important. I think we're moving from crisis to crisis to crisis at the moment. We've got a war in Europe. We came from the pandemic, and we're now into kind of, whilst I wouldn't call it hyperinflation, like, people's cost of living, both employees and customers, are being squeezed. And so customer lifetime value is going to become an issue. And I think we need to concentrate and monitor and adapt our strategies to that in ways in which nobody's really prepared for. I said during the pandemic gave companies, and it was quite rightly, but carte blanche to provide really, really terrible experience. And we all kind of accepted it because it was COVID-19. But there's a lot of underlying risks and stuff associated with that I think haven't been picked up. And then for me and my business, I think we just really want to shake things up, like, within the industry. And that's not like a bullshit term. Like, we really want to cause a stir, and we really want to cause a stir when it comes to the speed of our output and affordability, because we think that if you can bring the price down to here, like, it then brings all of the big boys into a space that they don't want to be. Yeah. And so my final bit would be, like, concentrated on the home working, but human to human first is the most important thing. Like, nail your human to human, think about how much value is being left on the table for your human to human, and then don't spend millions doing prototypes of your CX transformation. Don't spend money on big tech and consultants. Like, hack away at it first, get to a point where you know how much value there is and how much benefit there is, and then start putting the tech and the consultants in to build it up and to maximize the value.
Yeah, no, that seems fair. It's almost a bit like, I've always said that you could have, you should own your vision. You shouldn't outsource the responsibility of defining what that means. You've got to own that, right? Because only when you own that do you know what you're going to need to buy to achieve that. And it's like somebody else shouldn't be telling you that.
No. And a lot of times as well, Adrian, like the consultants just tell you stuff that you already know, but because you paid them a fortune, like you listen to them rather than the guys who've got boots on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jimmy, a couple of questions before I go. These are the ones that I always ask at the end of these kind of podcasts. And it's my ongoing I call it my ongoing longitudinal social research.
Bullshit bingo.
Yeah, exactly. And so the first question is related to sort of Punk CX, and I've been for the last sort of 2-3 years since Punk CX has been come out. I've been asking people this one question because I've been collecting all these words, and I've got like over 150 of them right now. And so your challenge is to pick a word or one or two words that is not on that list. And the question is, what one or two words would you use to describe a more punk approach to customer experience?
So probably because I've said it a couple of times over the last couple of responses, I'd say hacking. I think when I think of punk, and I've been in I wasn't punk, but I've been in grunge bands before, and we didn't know how to play the instruments, and we didn't know where to get guitars from, and we didn't know how to use the speakers, and we didn't have a space to practice, and we didn't have any songs, and we were all shit. But it was like, how do you hack something together? And then even the style of the music is like a hack. You're hacking away at your instruments to create a sound and to create some noise. So I'd probably say hacking.
Love it. I believe that's not on the list. So nice work.
Boom! Do I win a prize?
And the second question is: so I wrote this. The follow-up to Punk CX was Punk XL, which is all about this idea that it's no longer sufficient to talk about just customer experience in isolation. We have to think about things more holistically, not just about employee experience, but stakeholder and customer, and also just impact on the world, the planet, our communities, and so on and so forth. And so I've been asking people to come up with a company or brand that they think is an experienced leader, either out there, they're raising the bar, they're pushing the boundaries and things. I mean, who do you think would deserve that moniker?
So look, I don't know whether or not this is in fact, I'm going to say one which is probably obvious, simultaneously obvious, but maybe it's like slightly more niche, hopefully, and that's Monzo.
Okay.
So I've had like fantastic experience with Monzo. Like, first of all, I was kind of one of the first tranche of customers when I think they were still called Mondo, like back in the day and before they rebranded. And first of all, making it really, really easy from a digital perspective. And we've talked a lot about voice. I never really interact with them through voice. It's all messaging, but their asynchronous messaging is fantastic. And when you really, really need to speak to somebody urgently, like they've been fantastic. And I think how they map their customer conversations to their brand and their ethos is really, really great. So yeah, my recommendation would be Monzo. Fantastic.
Well, Jimmy, thank you for that. I mean, that's all I have but I think we should definitely going to go for round 2 at some point. We'll figure that out. But I just want to say thank you for sharing your time and your perspective and your experience with us today. I think it's been super interesting, really good. I mean, it's like take down some myths and to talk about things in a bit more straightforward kind of like way. So I really enjoyed that. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.